This is Christina Birchler. I will be taking you through my analysis of Jumanji and the Polar Express. Both books were written by and illustrated by Chris Van Allsburg. I'm glad I decided on two books by the same illustrator because it allowed me to learn interesting facts about Van Allsburg's life and artistic style. I will be touching on a few during my presentation. Before I dive in, I wanted to share something you won't see in the images. The layout of each book is such that the text almost appears to be an afterthought, as if the author assumes it is not necessary to understand the story. In the original printing of the Polar Express, the images consume more than 75% of a two-page spread. The text is tucked all the way to either the left or right margin of that spread. In the original printing of Jumanji, the prominent images are on a page alone and the corresponding text is placed on the complete opposite page. I wanted to share with you an important point about the images I've chosen for my presentation. There have been many reprints of both the Polar Express and Jumanji since their original releases. When I decided on these two books and began analyzing, I wanted to stay true to the artist's original vision for these images. Therefore, I went with original prints. In my research, I did notice that reprints were done that had more vibrant illustrations. However, in my mind, this did not represent the illustrator's original vision for the book. Let's get started with Jumanji. Jumanji was the recipient of the prestigious Caldecott Award in 1982. The story begins on a cold day in November. Peter and Judy embarked on the adventure of a lifetime. An ordinary trip to the park led them to find an extraordinary game. The instructions for this game seem simple. Once the game is started, it's not over until someone wins. That game was Jumanji. The perspective in this story changes quite a bit. In many images, the reader appears to be at eye level with the characters, such as when the boy is hiding from the lion. At other times, the illustrator sets the reader above, and we look down on the characters and landscape. This occurs when the adventures begin. The most stunning is when the reader is eye to eye with the visiting creatures. We are close enough to a rhinoceros to feel his breath, and the python could easily reach out and bite us. I believe the most profound is at the end of the story when Peter and Judy have conquered the game. They stand 2 stories above ground looking down at the next victims of Jumanji. A technique that I noted is how the illustrator makes me feel at home in Peter and Judy's house. The home is large but quaint with lovely furnishings, artwork, and draperies. You sense that it is always clean and organized. Perhaps this is done on purpose so that when the havoc starts, the reader feels the same devastation and fear that the children are feeling. One adventure the children face is a monsoon. A downpour begins to fall in the living room, and Peter and Judy grab umbrellas and continue with the game. Van Allsburg uses a juxtaposition of shadow and light in this scene. Judy, who is seated in the background, carries an umbrella that is black and ominous. Peter, who is seated in the foreground, carries a bright umbrella, which is promising. I believe this is a hint to the reader that trouble is coming, but the future is bright. I chose to also analyze Jumanji from a historical perspective. Perhaps I am stretching this a bit, but it hit me as I read the first page and analyzed the first image. The main characters go to the park near their home. There they find a suspicious box. They pick it up and bring it home with them. Obviously, this book was written at a time when unattended boxes weren't treated as potential explosive devices. Also worth noting is that these 2 young children were left alone all day with no supervision and freedom to leave the home. That behavior is not common now either. The clothing, toys, furnishings, and decor hint to a certain time in history as well. Now on to one of my most favorite stories of all time, The Polar Express. The Polar Express was the recipient of the prestigious Caldecott Award in 1986. It begins late one Christmas Eve, when a young boy who's desperately hoping to hear sleigh bells lie awake questioning the existence of Santa Claus when he hears the rumble of a steam engine, the Polar Express. What follows is the tale of the journey on this magical train to the North Pole. Throughout the story, the illustrations are drawn from the perspective of a child. Imagine walking into the bedroom. As an adult, our perspective would be higher as we peered down toward the bed. In these illustrations, we are meant to feel child-sized. I would think that young readers would appreciate this perspective. As an adult, it brings me back to my childhood. Also prevalent is the repeated use of stripes. Stripes are found on children's pajamas, bed coverings, furnishings, and even the wrapping paper on the small present from Santa Claus. A sense of mystery is created with both shadow and light. The reader wonders what is shining so brightly into the boy's bedroom on Christmas Eve. The reader knows that it is late into the evening, yet this bright light is beaming through the window. The mountains appear both ominous and promising at the same time. They are drawn off the page so that the reader cannot see the peaks. We don't know how high the mountains are, nor how long the journey will take, but the mountains are drawn with light at the highest points, symbolizing hope. I'm not an artist, so I did need to do a bit of research to find out that the illustrations were done with oil pastels. The images are highly realistic, especially the faces of the children. The characters appear realistic due to the fine detail drawn on their faces. Don't you feel as if you could be seated next to the children drinking hot chocolate? And Santa Claus is so close when he gives the boy the bell from his sleigh. How could anyone not believe? This is a true juxtaposition to the whimsical themes among this and other Van Allsburg's books. I also chose to analyze the Polar Express from a cultural perspective. Of course, the most prominent is the celebration of the Christian holiday Christmas. This book has sold over 7 million copies, and it is cherished at Christmas time each year. However, I feel that the promise of believing and having faith in someone is transferable to all. Throughout the pages, the reader notes Christmas decorations such as trees and wreaths. And of course, the book wouldn't be complete without Santa Claus, his sleigh, reindeer, and many elves. Chris Van Allsburg is from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He pays homage to his hometown and own life in subtle ways in the Polar Express. The bridge traversed by the steam locomotive is modeled after the famous Gillett Bridge in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Notice the M on the pennant hanging above the child's bed. Did you see the bull terrier puppet on the bedpost? That is Fritz. A beloved family dog, Van Allsburg includes some version of Fritz in each of his books. Now just a bit on the technical components of my presentation. I know we're not supposed to speak too much about it, but I think it's important that I tell you why I chose what I did. I chose for a game piece to represent Jumanji because it is a replica of the game piece that was used in the game. This is obviously the main focus of the book, so I wanted to find something that would truly represent it. I chose a jingle bell for the Polar Express because it is the gift the boy receives from Santa Claus, the first gift of Christmas that year. It becomes a main focus of the book because towards the end, the boy is the only one who continues to hear the bell ring. We've already spoken a little about Fritz. I chose to use Fritz as my home icon, so throughout the presentation you can follow Fritz home. I also chose to include an About the Author page. This was simply because I spent a lot of time researching Van Allsburg because he wrote both of the books I chose. There's a mini biography included, as well as a link to his website. I chose an image to represent Chris Van Allsburg with his model of Fritz.